Worf wastes a beverage. Geordi could see the freckles on Worf's nose. And Q is nothing but a flim-flam man, whatever the heck that is. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc, Lofton, and Denise Crosby.
Hello.
Hi, guys.
My name is Ryan T. Husk. Today, we're doing a review of The Next Generation, Season 1, Episode 9, Hyde and Q. Story by C.J. Holland, teleplay by C.J. Holland and Gene Roddenberry. Directed by Cliff Bole. This was November 23rd, 1987. Where were you? How you guys doing today? Oh, by the way, sorry. Sponsored by Grandpa One.
Yeah.
Now, how are you today?
Good. I just realized that this episode aired the day before my birthday.
Oh, right.
November 20th. Yeah, mine's the 24th. And so let's see. I would have been starting the party early, I guess.
Yeah.
With Hyde and Q.
Hyde and Q. So this is already our second Q episode. So if you're watching this at home for the first time in 1987, you're thinking, oh, I guess this is going to be a recurring villain. Clearly, if he's in episode 1 and 2 together, and then episode 9, this is like even Cirroc. I don't think we even had Gul Dukat in two of the first 10 episodes of Deep Space Nine, did we? We waited a season or two.
No, we didn't have him. He's, I guess, the most reoccurring villain. It's so early on.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I you know what's funny is as I was watching this episode, so Ryan and I have a thing when we watch Deep Space Nine, we call it the O'Brien must suffer.
Oh yeah,
because
that's a big thing around. Everybody loves that stuff. Yeah,
right. Because they always make Chief O'Brien's character, played by Colin Meaney, suffer on our show. There's something he has to go through, and something miserable is going on in his life. And he has to suffer. He bears the brunt of the suffering on our show. And and now as I'm watching this, now when we're 10 episodes into this first season, I'm realizing that you're the suffering character.
I knew you were going with that. The Tasha must suffer. She suffered in her backstory. She's frozen in the first episode. She's captured by the guys in Code of Honor. Now she's put in the penalty
box.
Right. And then I thought, wait, is there going to be no Tasha in this episode? But then luckily she goes onto the bridge and she's like, yeah, I'm in a penalty box.
I just thought, I can't believe she started crying.
I did too.
I just went, no, come on.
Well, I think
that's so out of character
for me.
Well,
it is out of character.
It's so out of character for her. I mean, come on. Yeah. This is the woman that, was abandoned at 5 on Hell Planet, survived all of that, could beat the shit out of anybody. And that's not just, she's not emotional,
right. We've seen that she can be, yeah.
But to cry that she's in the, like, I'm in the penalty box.
Somebody give her a teddy bear.
It's so wonderful to watch this, 35 years later and go, oh, no. That's just not the right choice in that at all.
Do you remember that scene? I mean, it's 35 years later, but do you remember?
No, I don't remember. Okay. It took me totally by surprise, the crying part. I remember being put in the penalty box and being brought. It was just the three of us on the bridge there for a while. Mm-hmm. Now, what was weird is, again, it was a little bit of the similar to when Tasha is impulsive at Encounter at Farpoint, and he freezes her. So she gets her phaser out and she goes, Q, you've gone far enough. Boom. He does the same thing. So it's, it's keeping in that theme.
It's true.
She keeps stepping in it a little bit, or that fire in her takes over. and he calls, he stops it, nips
The
it in
vigilance. Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
So that was fun to see. The thing though, which I found strange watching it this time, was he just arbitrarily says, "You're out of the penalty box. It's over." He had set up the situation that those guys, it was, beholden on, the crew to not mess up. One thing that they have a problem with, they're sent to the penalty box. So they cannot, it's beholden to them to save Tasha. But he just randomly, without any thought behind it, just says, "You're out of the penalty box now."
Now, I think this is the big difficulty in writing, is that, for example, when not Stan Lee, but the DC Comics, when they first created Superman, they shortly realized these stories suck. When you have somebody that can't get hurt, they can't get killed, they can't get anything, there's no real story. There's just a guy saving things, but there's no fear or arc or anything. Now, so when you create a character like Q, it gives the writers that kind of Superman complex of, they don't have to then check themselves and be creative and say, how do we get this person to do this, or how do we get this person out of that situation? They could just say, Q changed his mind. Q, yeah. And and this will be one of the few times where I'll critique the writers and say that can be lazy, and that can be an easy way out. If you have an omniscient Superman type character that can just do anything and see anything, it gives you a way out, a pass, get out of jail free card in writing every single step of the way. So you don't have to make things connect. You don't have to tie the loose ends. You could just say, "Oh, but I thought that Q changed his mind." Done.
Right. That's interesting. What would have been better then is when he puts Tasha in the penalty box, he says, "I'll let you out when I feel like it," or not.
Totally.
Then you wouldn't have set up any of those, requirements that those crew members are the ones that, because then nothing happens. They don't do anything. You shift gears really quickly, and now you've got the vicious animal things coming at them.
Weren't that vicious?
Tasha's already out of the box. Yeah. Writers should have got, in combing through the script again, should have said, "Well, no, we've set this up. Let's not set it up to begin with that way. Let's just have Q be in control of the penalty box."
And can I just throw out one more thought just real quick before we move on to the next thing? And I know, Cirroc, you've got a lot of good stuff to add, but before we do, when you mentioned Tasha crying, now on the other side of this, I'm going to give the writers probably more credit than they deserve in this case. And the way I looked at it was, that's trauma. And when people suffer trauma, sometimes the reaction to it can come out in really strange ways, in strange times. It can come out 30 years later. If somebody suffers trauma when they're 7 years old, they can be tough and tough it out for 30 years. And then something triggers them, or they get weaker, or they finally address those issues. And that's a very real thing in trauma. Now, I don't think that the writers in the writers' room were like, "Okay, so here's, in 1987, but that's the way I justify it in my mind.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. There's no question about that. Trauma, can be buried, all you need is a trigger. That being said, I would think that by this time in Tasha Yar's career, and having gone through the Federation Academy training, she would have had a lot of psych training, a lot of time dealing, because she, by the nature of her position in, chief of security, where she's going to have to be in situations that are absolutely dangerous and confrontational, something that she has experienced more than anyone on that ship. So, I'm just thinking, oh, this is a woman that maybe she would cry in her room, or maybe she would seek some therapy, on ship, which, you know, I probably mentioned there was this one scene with Troy that was never filmed. And it was that kind of, you know, that kind of situation. But I think in that moment where she's doing her job, you know, and she's trying to think about getting through this and getting her away team back and getting out of this mess. It just seemed so inappropriate, an inappropriate choice at that point in time. I wish I had this attitude back then, you know, and would have said, and would have been able to recognize it or catch it. I'm sure it was, you know, presented as a moment where we see a different side of her, you know, where she is this fragile and human. But
yeah, I think that's what they were trying to go to, and also play the chemistry between you and Picard, because there's never been a moment where he can be like the fatherly figure or the healer helper for you.
Right.
But I did think that the stakes were not high enough in this particular episode to warrant you breaking down emotionally in that kind of a way. If it was something where you really suffered a material, real loss, maybe you were handicapped, you lost a limb, something like that would, you know, impede you from being able to do whatever you wanted to do in security, then I would say, oh, wow, she lost her limb, and this is going to, you know, alter the course of her life, and she feels, you know, fragile and vulnerable because of it. That would make more sense. But this Q kind of playful game scenario that he always puts you guys in doesn't seem to me to have a life or death kind of stakes involved with it. It's more like a game, a riddle, a puzzle, you know,
and also, you know, thinking about this, so he puts her in the penalty box. She's gone. Now he explains to the remaining crew what's going to happen here. So she's not
how
even
did she know that
conversation? So she doesn't even understand, unless she's, you know, it's psychically coming through in some way.
She's
but
hearing it.
I mean, but she has no idea that, you know, if there's only space for one in the penalty box.
Right. Right.
So there is no life or death, you know, there is no state.
And that's why I think these things, and I have not seen it, but I think these kinds of things were covered in the 455 Films documentary, Chaos on the Bridge. It's like the chaos of the first season or two. And like you've described, Denise, if there are a lot of things and scripts were done on the fly, and things like that are things that normally might get caught on a second pass or a third pass or something. And so it does feel, when we point these little things out, it does feel like they were flying by the seat of their pants. They were making changes. Even this script felt like I wasn't sure if they should focus on one story or the other, because it kind of switched stories midway through. At first it was, you know, Q, and they're on the planet and they're doing the French War. That's an entire episode. But then the second half just became, now Riker is a Q and he's got these things. Each of those are their own separate episodes. Those are not A plot and B plot that can be put together, or first half and second half. Those are separate episodes. And so, and I'd love to hear what was going on in those writers' room, you know, because they're all great ideas. And I just feel like something was rushed to where they couldn't quite meld things together sometimes.
Yeah, and let's not forget the other story of helping these people that have just, you know, had an explosion.
That's true. That would have been a B plot to one of those.
Right.
Yeah. So the thing that I'm looking at is, I think they're falling victim from the kind of storytelling that was prevalent in the 80s. And the 80s, I think of Magnum PI, and I think of the 18, and those stories were very, you know, kind of easy,
Procedural. Yeah.
procedural, very like you knew what was going to happen next. It was very had a formula to it.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think that their formula for the Q didn't resonate well for me in this episode. I feel like they should be put in a challenge or find themselves in a situation prior to knowing that Q is the one responsible
that's
for
good stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
so that way they don't know why they're on this planet and what's going on, and start off with a mystery, like what we were supposed to go rescue these people, but we're on this planet and we're trying to figure out what's going on. Now Riker has powers. We don't know what's going on. He has the power to do stuff, and it could be kind of unveil it that way, and then we find out after the halfway point or somewhere that it's all Q's concoction. But once they introduce it as a Q episode from the beginning, I'm like, oh, it's going to be a jokey kind of, dressing in different outfits, and it's going to be one of those, overly Shakespeare type of episode. And so
he did mention Picard knows Hamlet, which was cool because Patrick Stewart has played Hamlet.
Right. I mean, it was easy for him to make that transition, right?
I know, like dueling Shakespeare actors,
right?
The Shakespeare battle.
Yeah, who's the better Shakespeare historian? And so, I think in those kinds of way, I think the storytelling is too much like the time period, as opposed to breaking it up, making it more of a mystery. Start with the end or the middle and the beginning, and you know what I mean? Like move around the pieces so it's not so predictable. Because at the end of the day, we feel like Q's always just going to walk away and say, "All right, you guys get a pass. I'm going to go away from now." And that's pretty much how I feel like it's going to end, anyways, all the time.
Right.
There's there's nothing at stake there, or make one of the cast members vanish for an entire episode or two. And then, so we think that he has the power to, to kill off people or whatever. And then he brings them back at some point. But at least I know that there's, at the end of the episode, something, it won't all just go back to, oh, everything's back again and everything's fine again.
Well, and also this is finally, in this episode, an attempt to kind of explain the presence of Q.
Yeah.
Because he just keeps, now we see him again. Like, what do you, and they're even asking, it's like the actors are asking for us as the audience.
Yeah. What do you want?
What do you want?
Totally.
Why are you coming around? You're so, you have much more powerful than we are, much more, all this other stuff. What do you want with us?
Yeah. Why waste your time?
Yeah. And, so they kind of get to this.
And if you're so intelligent and all-knowing and whatnot, then wouldn't you know the behavior and responses of what they were going to do anyways? You would know that they would reject.
Wouldn't you not be surprised when you found out that the humans were these amazing creatures? You would have already known this.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
But we did get a little bit more backstory on Q in that regard, like you were saying, Denise, that we got a little more backstory from the Q continuum. Apparently he answers to people. They took him away. They're more curious.
Mm-hmm.
So we're actually getting backstory on Q now and the Q continuum, and we're going to get a lot more of that in the future. But what were you saying, Cirroc?
And I enjoyed that backstory. I did like a little bit of the backstory. I think they should have went more with the backstory. And they make Q somebody that is irredeemable and you can't root for. And to me, that's not really a sign of a good villain. There's a good villain has some aspect, some element of them that you root for, or that you think is just, that you admire maybe, or something about them. It can't be just all dark, all. It has to be some element there that, you're like, well, maybe this guy has he's right about something that he's thinking, or and I don't see Q being right about anything. There's nothing that he's right about. It just seems like he's just there to interfere and play. I look at it like it's going to be a play episode. But having said all that, I do want to give credit to some of the performances that actors deliver, regardless of whatever the circumstances. You get great performances, and I thought that Jonathan Frakes did a great job of transforming his persona once he got the power of the Q. You could see he changed his body language. He was standing there at one point with his arms folded.
I was like, "Whoa, bro, slow down, man!"
Wow.
yeah. So he really took on the bravado and the ego of somebody who feels invincible. And even when he was walking to the ready room, he kind of had this pace about himself, like, "Move out of my way, I'm the boss." There were certain elements and tweaks in his performance that I thought were great. Even the tone when he calls him Jean-Luc, he says, "All right, Jean-Luc."
Yeah,
and it was like he was talking down to him,
right?
And I liked that adjustment in Jonathan Frakes' performance. I thought he delivered that transition very well.
Yeah, what myself as a fan, what we like when we're watching Star Trek episodes for the whatever time is picking up on these new little pieces that we missed, And so for me, I have not seen these episodes in a very, very long time, which is great. So I'm catching these little things that I didn't notice before, like these little backstories of the Q. I don't remember that. I don't remember the moment that Denise had with Captain Picard on the bridge in the penalty box that kind of wasn't a penalty box. And so I think that what the writers were giving us a lot of times is these little nuggets, deliberately or not, that give us more insight into the characters and a little bit more, because we just want to know more about the characters, and all the episodes are over. So we're not going to get more episodes to do that. So we have to look into each episode to get little things that we missed. And then just touching again one more time about when Tasha and Picard had their moment that was kind of good, but kind of weird. I think they were giving us a moment that it's just Picard and Tasha. We had not seen that before. We had not seen a moment with just the two of them, especially with, kind of high stakes and also a strange situation. It was ripe for a great moment. Seemed like maybe the choice was a little wrong to have her crying, but, I appreciate the attempt. It would have also been cool to have her have like an actual moment of, I'm not going to be a sitting duck again. I'm not going to whatever, or something, there could have been something great where she put something out, in defiance, and that would have, possibly been better.
Absolutely. And if, let's say that was the choice, that, she stands up and which is much more her energy, at this point, when we've seen Tasha, she's always, like, "Oh no, I'm not taking that. You want to fight? You got it. Let's go." And so if it would have been okay too for Picard to say to her, "Listen, you just take it easy, take a breath. It's going to be okay. We're going to figure this out together."
Yeah, but
and it
the performance was still great. That was the other thing about that was you were still great doing that moment. Patrick Stewart was still great doing that. I mean, it gives us something as fans. We see this and we still feel, even if it may have been a choice that seems weird, later on, it's still a moment that we appreciate and that you still delivered very well. To Cirroc's point about the acting, because there was great acting throughout, like Geordi, when the visor was removed. Let's talk about that in just a minute, because we got to hop to our break. We'll be right back on Seventh Rule. Hey, everybody. We are back with the two superstars, Cirroc Lofton and Denise Crosby. Here are the trivioids of the week very quickly. Counselor Troy is on a visit home. I want to know about that. She just had a week off. Was she getting married? What was the situation there? 504 colonists need medical attention from a methane gas explosion, probably Worf. Riker was just thinking about an old-fashioned lemonade. Worf wastes a beverage. Q is a French army marshal. The crew of the Enterprise visit a planet with twin moons. Q gives them a game of Can Anyone Stay Alive? Tasha Yar spends an afternoon in a penalty box. Tears are permitted in the penalty box. Orcs are wearing old French military uniforms. Picard knows Hamlet, and Geordi could see the freckles on Worf's nose. Yeah, what did you think about LeVar Burton's performance when they removed the visor? And we could finally see his eyes for the first time, I think maybe in the entire series.
Right.
And he could finally use them to act. It was beautiful.
Yeah. It was, it's always a very emotional, like vulnerable side to him whenever he's addressing his vision, whether, he longs to see, he wants to see, he knows he's, this is the difference. This is what creates a separation from us and him. And so he brings all of that out when he takes the visor off and looks at this, first of all, out the viewfinder, at this incredible universe. And then he swings to look at me. And it was so, again, a nugget dropped, what is going to happen here between these two? Is something going to happen between these two? And I'd forgotten that, that was a seed that was planted. So, it gives me something now as an actor, choices to make and things to play.
I thought it was one of the highlights of the episode, that moment, because when he looks at you and says, "You're as beautiful as I imagined and more." I was like, that is the smoothest line I think any guy.
You wrote that down. I noticed you got it word for word there.
I texted it to my husband to memorize.
Yeah. I was like, any guy who uses that line, that's the mic drop moment. There's nothing else to say after that. That was so smooth. He won me over with that. I was like, oh, you're so sweet. I was like,
I will say it might be a little overrated. I did try that once at a bar. I said, you're even more beautiful than I imagined, and more, or whatever it was. And she turned to me and said, when were you imagining me, creep?
Yeah. You have to, you got to use it in the right way,
right.
The right context,
know?
Right.
Yeah, you got to have Ray Charles glasses on and then take them off.
There we go.
Got your vision back.
That's the line. You just restored my vision.
There it is.
Oh, God.
And
no.
What else I liked about it was it gave me a moment of how special sight is. It made me actually appreciate my own sight and how important sight is, because, people go through life without observing some of the beauties of life. And I feel like, the moment that he got, even if it was short-lived, to be able to see all of the people's faces that he works alongside, and to be able to take in the natural way of everything around him, the planets outside and the universe and the stars and the ship and all of the stuff, for him to see it in the way that he's always wanted to see it, I thought it was like a dream come true. But it was also special the way he resisted and said, no, make me the way I was.
Yeah.
And then when he said please at the end, he emphasized the please so hard. It was one of those kind of tear-jerk moments where I really felt the kind of performance that he delivered in Roots years before this.
I thought the same.
Yeah.
When he took off the visor, I recognized Roots.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. There, there's the depth of that man's soul, is felt in both those pieces. And you're right. It's the choice he makes to put them back on. I mean, who would do that? You would imagine if your sight is restored. I mean, it'd be really interesting to ask, someone who has no sight, what would, if that was restored? I mean, would they wouldn't be the same person.
Right.
Yeah. And I just thought it took a lot of standing by your moral compass, a lot of fortitude to be able to resist that.
Yeah.
And say no, that this, I don't want it like this. Right. I don't want it. I don't want this. And I thought that was it showed so much heart on Geordi's part to be able to do that in that moment. I think that's to me, that was what the story was about. It was really about Picard saying, you can tempt my crew. And I really felt like the biblical story of temptation and the devil and the garden and those kinds of stories, right? So here Q is coming like Satan, offering the world to people, right? He even says that. He says the greatest possible future is what he was offering Riker if he, accepts. So to me, that's the offer that the devil gives you and says, I can give you the world, the greatest possible future. You'll be richer or famous and whatever it is. And so that was the temptation there, even for Geordi, even for for Wesley. It was the temptation of, I can make all your dreams come true. And Picard's faith in his crew and the people around him, that they would resist that temptation, that they would fight that back. He was confident that they would choose their own life as opposed to this imaginary life that was being thrust upon them.
Yeah. And that's why I was just going to say, that's why I think that this could have been its own episode, so that we could that could build up more slowly and more slowly, because it was such a sudden change. And there was the clear moral of the story was in that part of this episode. And it would have been good if that could have been its own episode. And then the B story would have been the saving the people on the planets. You're
absolutely right. Absolutely. Because and Riker turned on a dime. I mean, even though the gifts were not being received, Data wanted no part of it. Geordi, wanted his no part of it. That was enough for him to say, what was I thinking? I feel like an idiot. And Patrick says, you should.
As you should.
As you should. And on they go, I mean, it was like, no, you need, it would have been interesting to get a little more into Riker's whole, journey through this. His own temptation. I mean, everything happened really quickly. The one thing it was, I must say, and it's probably watching it in this framework of 2023, but when, and I know that it's Klingon behavior to have.
I was going to bring that up. Yes.
Wow, man, that was hard for me to watch. I got to tell you, to see her go, him hit her and go flying across the bridge. I mean, that was just really like. Well,
Klingons
there's no way
violent.
I would want to do that. Yeah, and we know their sexual, patterns. I've seen this act out in cons. I'm sure we all have. Where these Klingons and the women, and they like to be, pulled or something. But I mean, I've never seen one, get hit like that. And within all that we've seen and know and talk about now as a culture, and how, women are still, a certain number of women are getting killed each year from their mates, their partners. It's just like, oh man, you can't do that now. I hope they're not going to shoot a scene like that now.
Well, that's why I think they probably pivoted a little bit on that. I mean, certainly from what we've seen, Cirroc and I in Deep Space Nine, it's very mutual. Like they beat each other up. And when he was married to Jadzia Dax, like, you know, she would come in and she'd have a broken arm, but he'd be worse off, you know, because that's just their thing. They just love to beat each other up. Now, in this episode, they only showed it one-sidedly, and that's certainly did not look good.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what did look good was Jordy saying, this is sex. Is this your idea of sex to you? He says, this is sex. But then he fights it like a good Klingon and says, no, this is no place for sex. And Q delivers the line of the episode. He says, no place, microbrain? What possesses you? So that was my win of the day.
Yep.
Yeah, the microbrain, macro head, all the name calling. It seems beneath somebody who would be like this all intelligent kind of superior being. It doesn't make sense to me. But I do like the way Delancey plays with some of his delivery, when he does some of his words. And the one that I like in this episode is when he says, the undoubtable Commander Riker, whom I noticed before. So it just, the way he said whom I noticed before is like, you know, like, I'm, you know, you got my attention, little guy. Yeah. You know, and I just felt like he played with it so well. He also did the Shakespeare kind of back and forth very well, I thought, with Picard. But when he said, yeah, is this your idea of sex? I was thinking to myself, for one, this is why Wesley can't be on the bridge, because
that is so true.
Because there's Klingon sex happening over here.
Yeah,
you know?
All kinds of shit going on.
Yeah, this is not suitable for him. I was also bothered by the physicality there with the Klingon woman, because it would be different if it was like a mutual thing. Maybe she kicked him in the groin and then he responded or something, and that was their little foreplay. That would have been cool. But just the fact that he openly strikes her that hard, which caused her to flip and roll and all of that stuff. Yeah. I'm like, that's just tasteless for these. It should have been tasteless then,
right?
But there could have been a different way to show that they have this physical thing.
I think so.
Maybe it should be initiated by the woman. It's got to be something different than domestic violence that we see.
Yeah. You know, that reflects in our culture, to our species, something that is so, you know, violent and offensive.
And there are rules of etiquette amongst people. I know we accept aliens and everybody has their own different way, but there are rules that we all have to abide by and agree to in a public setting. So just because your alien race likes to kill people, you can't kill people around here. You know, you know what I mean?
We've had this conversation before, right? This is one of the big cruxes, which was, where does tolerance for another culture end and playing by our rules on our turf begins? And there's, you know, obviously no answer to that. But in one Deep Space Nine episode,
end at abusing a woman publicly in front of that can't be.
Well, remember, in one Deep Space Nine episode, Worf was going to kill his brother because his brother asked him to. He said, "I want to die."
Sisko said, "You can't."
Right, and so where's the line of, sorry, you're on our space station, you can't kill your brother, and where does that start, and where does acknowledging that that's their culture, the brother should kill his other brother if he wants to? So that's, you know, there's no answer to that, but it's interesting that they were touching on that, maybe unknowingly.
I would say on Federation ground. If you're in a ship, if you're on a Federation station, if you're anywhere on that ground, then that ground should abide by some type of international kind of rules. But if you are on your home planet and Kronos or wherever you're at, you can do whatever you want there. But you can't, you know, or even if the physical thing between Klingons is a thing, then that can be something that can happen in private, in your quarters. That's what you guys could do. You can't publicly beat and rape this woman in front of us, and we're not allowed to say anything because that's your culture. We have to be able to say, no, that's not acceptable behavior here in this space.
I mean, by this century too, according to all these little nuggets that have been dropped along the way, we don't raise animals for food. We don't
Right.
We don't, that by now, I mean, this would be so far out, God willing, in the 24th century, that a man, flies a woman across, the street with his pure physical force. It would be like, oh God, that's just it. It would we haven't seen or heard of something like that in thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least add that to the lines.
Yeah.
So if he hits this woman and Picard says, "Wolf, what are you doing? You can't do that," or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Let him defend himself and say, "Well, my people do this and this," so that we, as the audience, get an explanation there.
Yeah.
There has to be a check there.
Right.
Or
everybody
better,
can't just stand there with their hands in their pockets.
I know.
Or better, she could say something and say, "Hey, stay out of this. I'm enjoying this," or something like that.
Exactly.
And he could say, "Well, not
Yeah.
here, not now," kind of thing.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And then you add it in the dialogue. Yes,
it
exactly.
has to be addressed.
It has to be addressed. You can't all be standing there watching him do this, and everybody. Well, we'll jump in when we think it's gone out of hand.
I know. I was like, wow. That took me by surprise too. I just don't remember that. I conveniently blocked that from memory.
Yeah. That could have been a Troy line had she been there. They try to stop her and she goes, "No, Captain, she wants this, or she's enjoying it, or something." And you'd be like, tough shit.
Right.
But actually, where do you remember where Marina Sirtis was?
No.
Because clearly she wasn't available that week, right? Gotta be what it is.
I don't, I certainly don't recall anything. And we had no say in that matter. It wasn't like I could go to the producers and say, "I'm going to skip next episode because I'm having a little procedure, or something." I mean, that was not on the books by any means. So either it just was legitimately an episode that, they didn't write her in. I don't know what her contract, if it was all episodes and if she pay or play or anything like that. I have no idea. Or maybe she had a legitimate thing that, came up and I certainly wasn't privy to it. And they gave her the week off.
That's interesting. However, just realize it is time for the home run of the episode. What do you think, Denise? Who gets the home run of the episode on this beautiful shiny black ball?
I know. Well, again, I mean, I think that Delancey just, shines in this role, and it's like he's just savoring it all. He's just doing all kinds of vocal games and having a grand old time and really just seizing this character. And I think he enjoys it so much. I think this is when the producers and everybody said, yes, this guy's coming back, we're going to make this work. So he's just like takes you on a ride with this character. I'll give it to Delancey.
Totally.
In absentia.
What do you think, Cirroc?
I did like Riker a lot in this episode. It kind of was his big episode in some type of way, even though it was kind of a split between Delancey, but really felt like Riker's big episode. Except that I'm going to have to say it's going to be LeVar Burton for me.
I had a feeling.
And those moments that he hit when he asked Worf, "Is this your idea of sex?" The way he said it, the delivery, I thought was hilarious. When he was so genuinely telling Tasha Yar how beautiful she was, I felt like he was being sincere. And then when he says to Wes, when he grows up, and he says, "Hey, Wes, not bad."
Yeah, I'm like, I think I put in my notes, relax, Jordy, take a break.
I know. I went, I have a big question mark too on that one. Like,
he's like,
wait a minute. Did I miss something in this whole, wow, man. I didn't know. I didn't know.
They actually cut out his line, which was, he was going to say it twice. He was going to say, "You're even more beautiful than I imagined too."
That's what
and you're like, hey.
He didn't have it. Wouldn't that have been funny?
To everybody.
Yeah.
I know.
He's like, "Not you, Picard. Everybody knows." Look, so my quick home run is it's the same as Cirroc's. I'm always blown away by how good LeVar Burton can act without his eyes, which is the most important thing for an actor, and he still nails it every time. And so I was really happy that he got to take off the visor and give us everything that he has. Home run of the day. Let's give some special thanks. They always hit home runs. Except, ironically, Homer Frizzell. Dr. Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, Carmen, a.k.a. Skillet, TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Bill Victor Arukin, Titus Muller, Darlena Marie, Dr. Muhammad Noor, Tierney C. Diekman, Anna Post, Rex A. Wood, Anil O. Palat, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, DQ, Neil Akasaka, Justine Norton-Kurtzen, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, live from Tokyo, Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Jane Jorgensen, lots of J's there, Henry Unger, Jed Thompson, Amy Renee Haynes, Sean Mouch, Marcia Classic Schreier, Randy Frank, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, and Jason Okun. All right, everybody, stick around. We've got the free-for-all up next, and we'll be right back on the 7th rule, which will be even more beautiful than you can imagine. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the 7th rule with Denise Crosby and Cirroc Lofton. It is time for the free-for-all. Malissa Longo is here. Carrie Schwent is also here. Homer Frizzell looks like Captain Picard in a couple episodes. Dr. Susan V. Gruner has the best smile. Matt Boardman is here wearing his Wes. It's a Wes sweater, mostly. Also, we have Chris McAnimal thing. Ooh, that is good. Jason Okun is here with a cool poster in his background. Tierney C. Diekman is here. I think there's an animal back there, but not savage. Dr. Marie Segal is here gracing us with her presence. And Mai is, guess what? Live in Tokyo. All right. Malissa Longo, would you start us off with your awesome and radical 7th rule shirt?
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to start with some quotes that jumped out at me. First one is from Worf. Grrr. I love that. Another one was, "He's nothing but a flim-flam man." And then Worf responds.
What does that mean?
Well, Worf responds with flim-flam. Appropriate. I thought there was some really strong acting in this episode, particularly from John Delancey and Denise and Patrick Stewart. You all knocked it out of the park. And there was a really great moment for me when Riker says, "What do you need, Q?" And he and Q are alone on the planet together, and they're having this moment, and there was some good back and forth there. I liked the bits where Picard and Q were reciting Shakespeare at each other, and Q hurls the Scottish play at Picard, and Picard comes back with some Hamlet. That was cool. The moment Geordi sees without his visor for the first time was really moving for me. I was surprised. I got choked up. I was like, it's like those videos that you see on YouTube that, people who are colorblind are given those glasses and they can see color for the first time. I was like, wow. A couple of things that were a little bit dissonant for me. It was the stuff with the Klingon woman made me very uncomfortable. And then I don't know why Troy was excluded from this episode. But overall, I think it was an interesting concept. I like the questions it poses and, what would we all do if we were given infinite power, and how would we use it, each of us, and would we use it and should we use it? So I thought it had an interesting through line, something to, for the thought monkeys to chew on. So.
Great stuff. Not to burst anybody's bubble, but my brother and I were inspired to do that colorblind thing because my dad's colorblind. We bought those really expensive ass sunglasses and we gave it to him. And he was like, oh, cool. And we were like, can you see the color? And he's like, oh, yeah, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I guess a little bit. Okay.
Oh,
cool. Happy birthday.
That's my
That was his
bubble.
birthday. We brought all these colorful balloons and took him out to a park and surprised. And he was just like, oh, yeah, I think so. Oh, yeah, a little. Okay. Anyway, forgot to say, Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
Probably around the 7-1. Yeah. 7-1, 7-2.
Anybody else? All right. Very close. 6.9 according to the viewers on IMDb.
Nice.
Oh.
And also, by the way, we forgot to mention there was one giant NAM here, non-appearance mention. That was Counselor Troy, right? Was there another one? I didn't catch any others. All right.
I didn't.
I don't think so.
I didn't get to anything.
Okay. Well, Carrie Schwent, what's up? You are caught in Q's web. What do you think of this episode?
I enjoy any and all episodes that have Q in it because I love Q. And Q actually has a question. Why, when Riker came into the ready room, he did not mount his chair properly? He just sort of walked around it and sat down. He didn't swing his leg over like he was supposed to, or like he usually does. And he almost looked a little, if you look on his face, he almost looks just a tiny bit uncomfortable as he was walking around, like he thought about it for a second and then decided at the last minute to not. But yeah, I enjoy this episode. Riker's got some good high points and some kind of awkward low points. And John Luke very much knew that, you could tell ahead of time that he knew Riker would ultimately say no, but he had to let Riker come to it on his own. So he's like, okay, give people the things you think they want, and we'll see what happens. And he did not gloat at the end of that, and he probably could have, but he's just not that way. And also, I took Homer's challenge from last time, and when I created my limerick for this week, I did not cheat and use the website. And 80% of it just came to me in like 2 minutes on my way to work the other day. So here we go. Hugh drops by to have some fun, messing with the crew he's simply not done. Riker gets a great gift, but it causes a rift. He says no, but Picard's bet is won. And Q's in a lot of trouble. He's in some trouble. And while I've got Denise, the sweet moment with Tasha and Picard, when she's all freaking out and she's crying a little bit, and when you're in the penalty box, tears are permitted. And yeah, such a sweet, and your facial expressions, and yeah, it was very, very just sweet scene with the two of them. And I thought you did great with that, because having a little freak out like that is not fun. And sometimes we need someone to tell us it's okay to freak out for a minute. You're allowed.
Mm-hmm.
See, Tom Hanks could learn a little something from you. I'll tell you that much. Right? In League of Their Own. There is crying in the penalty box.
I thought the same thing when I watched that scene.
All right. Homer Frizzell is here. He's never cried in the penalty box. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you. I want to add to what Melissa has said and just highlighting that Shakespeare banter between Q and Picard. And, Q is quoting from one of the plays, and I'm not quite so well versed in Shakespeare as others here, but and then Picard is sort of saying something in reply to him. He's like, "Oh, you know that one." So he was kind of disappointed with that one, and then he's trying on a different one. It's like he's in some sort of a competition with these lowly humans, and I think despite himself, he's being not depressed, but he's being impressed by them, and perhaps a little bit rankled as well. So it was an interesting sort of premise in that I think the Q is a bit afraid of humanity, and Q essentially fails in his mission and he's going to get punished, or at least that's the impression I got at the end. I like this moment here where Picard, Tasha Yar is in the penalty box and he goes up the horseshoe, and there's a slight hesitation as he's making to put his hand on Tasha's shoulder, as though he's not really comfortable with that kind of intimacy, but he does it. And then later on, there's more of like an embrace there. So I think this is a big moment for him as far as that goes as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Dr. Susan V. Gruner is here. How are you today, Sue?
I'm dealing with COVID, but I'm here.
Still.
It's strange. It is so strange. So if I sound bizarre, it's because I am. I really liked this episode. I do not remember the colors. I loved the costuming, the bright reds, the green background. I don't remember that originally. Has it been redone somehow? Is that a stupid question? But
no, it was always that way. You're probably just seeing it a little bit more vibrant since it's been remastered.
I thought it was.
Maybe that's vibrant.
Why. I absolutely loved the colors and the costume that they gave Q, all the French, I guess the French uniform. What I liked best about this episode is, for me, it's the first time that I think Patrick Stewart really is starting to fit into the role, and we see him as being a really good captain. What he did with Tasha, I thought, was what a good captain would do. Every once in a while, a captain has to be human and show empathy and compassion and not just be this strict, stick up your butt kind of guy. I thought he did great. I love that scene, Denise, with you and Patrick. I thought it was great.
Thank you.
And I thought it was a good episode. There's so much to the question I asked myself: what would I do? What would I do if given that kind of power? And I thought, chocolate and shoes,
cars,
saving the planet.
Definitely a lot of cars in Sue's future in that case. That's for sure. All right. Up next, we've got Mr. Matt Boardman here, who, being a VFX guy, can tell us, how did they get such a green background on those stages? Oh, wait.
Well, you see, when a red color and a blue color... Wait, no, that's not right. But no, this is a fun episode. To kind of piggyback on what Sue said about getting a chance to see Picard kind of filling out that role as a captain, I love that at the end of the episode, he doesn't, he gives Riker every opportunity to turn away from this, and he could very well he could order him right then and there and say absolutely not. But he trusts his crew, and which is great because we've only seen this for a short number of episodes, but we already see that there's kind of like as a captain, he has observed these behaviors in all of his crew, and so he just says, okay, have at it, as Riker's offering him up, offering everybody up these gifts, because he knows and he trusts that the people that he leads are not going to go down this path of these gifts that are offered to him. I still crack up at the of him making Wesley older, and what Riker's vision of what Will Wheaton would look like when he's older. So but I love that moment in which each one of them says, thank you, but this is not me. Wesley, this is great, but if it's okay with you, I'd really like the chance to grow up on my own. And Melissa, you're right. The whole Worf, what he thinks Worf wants, I was like, I don't know. I was kind of like,
yeah,
it's just like, oh my goodness.
Especially seeing it in 2023, this sequence is really hard to watch.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know how it was on set. Yeah.
It was always prefaced and explained that this is how they do it. This is how the Klingons do it. And, it's not what we imagine it to be, but, it's still, we reference it through our eyes, through our experience. And it is so violent and so inappropriate after all that we have endured and women have to continue to endure. It was shocking to see. I had forgotten that, even though we know in the world of the Klingon lore, this is what's done, but I have a really hard time with it.
Yeah, me too. I was like, come on, Worf, don't pull out your mechleth right now.
Or Kurleth.
Take it outside, kids. Get a room.
Melissa. Don't think we didn't hear that, Melissa. Riker liked it, though. Great stuff there, Matt. All right. What is up, Chris McAnimal thing? How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. So a couple of notes that I wanted to bring up. I love the episode, by the way. And I thought that was a nice little stunt action Michael Dorn did. They're leaping over the horseshoe.
We didn't cover that. So
action. Good. Fantastic. And as an intellectual, I also enjoyed it, as everyone has already mentioned, the little interaction between Picard and Q discussing humanity with Shakespeare quotes. I also liked Denise, that nice little hesitation you had there as Riker came back onto the bridge later. She just pauses for just a fraction of a second and walks a little more slowly, like, oh no, he's here. Shit's about to hit the fan. Mm-hmm. It was just fantastic. Also, by the way, to answer your question, Ryan, the Flim Flam Man is a 1967 film starring George C. Scott.
Ooh.
On my Plex server. I haven't watched it yet, but I hope to soon, and I'll let you know what I think of it.
It's also just a term.
Mm-hmm.
For like con
man.
Yeah, like they're not who they appear to be. They're not what they appear to be.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And another honest question here. Well, actually, before I do that, I'll go ahead and mention my phrase of the episode: "Seize my vessel."
Oh, yeah. Where Q is mocking him.
Yeah, exactly. It was fantastic. Of course, anytime Q shows up, it's a blast, and he has so many quotable lines every time he appears. But the question that I do have is, during that scene where Riker is giving everyone he knows, all the bridge officers, a gift, why didn't he give Tasha Yar a gift? Was that in the script, and was it cut out maybe or something?
Yeah, what's up with that?
And I was wondering about that. you're always timing these scenes. These scenes have to come in at a certain time. However, don't you want to know what he would have thought I wanted?
Absolutely.
Less evident, that's for sure. Yeah.
Like I have, my brain was, as I was watching the episode, I go, wait a minute, do I get my cat back, or does he give me my family? Does suddenly my family appear? Because she was orphaned at 5.
Mm-hmm. I would want the cat back. I mean, the family's great too, but I'm just saying that kitty.
I know from
I would think that he would give you the main guy from Code of Honor, since you were so into him.
Smitten.
Vaccine. The vaccine.
I know what she wants.
The vaccine. Right?
I know what she wants.
Or would it let me go off with Data one more time? I'm suddenly in the Naked Now outfit, and Data and I make
that's Data's wish.
Quick haste.
Data's wish. Oh my God.
I know what Tasha wants.
Yeah.
And I'm in the Naked Now thing.
Well, no, they just both disappear.
Data.
Go into your quarters.
It was never in the script, and it was literally.
No, I mean not that I recall. No. Mm-mm. So we're left wondering. We're left to our own imagination.
Yeah.
All right. Great stuff. Thanks, Chris. Also, Jason Okun is here with the Radical poster in his background.
Yeah, hello, everybody. First, the poster is definitely radical and bright red. I think I have a very soft spot for this episode. I mean, probably any Q episode, because I love what John Delancey does with the character, and I think the whole thing really shines with him. And you can always get caught in looking at Planet Hell, and obviously you're on the stage, you have backing, but the whole thing about Star Trek is not the effect. It really is a story. It really is the characters and themes. And at least to me, this episode and the theme of absolute power and humans getting godly powers is something that dates back to the original series, all the way back, certainly to the second pilot, maybe a little bit even to the first. And to me, it's almost a mix of the second pilot and the Squire of Gothos, where you have sort of this undisciplined god and a human getting godly powers. But here you actually get sort of the 80s sensibility, where instead of the hero getting the godly powers, becoming evil and just basically becoming completely corrupt and going with the powers to his own grave, you have Riker realizing that this is not the way it ought to be and basically renouncing the powers. So you get this sort of a change. And I guess, this was certainly Roddenberry's theme for a long time. And from what I understand, he probably rewrote the screenplay. I think it was his rewrite that ended up on the screen. And actually, some of the dialogue is very reminiscent of what was in the Squire of Gothos, almost to the word, which was kind of interesting. And putting Shakespeare in, I'm sure it had a lot to do with Patrick, obviously, being able to say that. And some of the other dialogue in Denise, by the way, the penalty box scene. I know we certainly talked about it, but some of the dialogue they gave you, I think it was. I think you did a marvelous job actually delivering it, because I don't think it was easy dialogue. This whole thing about me crying. It's a very difficult thing to deliver in a believable way. I think it's just, it's not technobabble, but to me, it seemed like difficult to deliver. And I think you did a great job.
Thank you. We talked about that in the episode earlier, Ryan and Cirroc and I. It just was an interesting choice to have her, cry like that. It facilitates Patrick, the comfort, the fatherly kind of gentleness that he shows. That's really the intent, and to give vulnerability to Tasha. It just feels to me it wouldn't have. she didn't really know the stakes at that point. She was taken to the penalty box before Q explains to the rest of the crew that the penalty box has only room for one. So if you guys mess up, it's all, upon you. So she doesn't really know that her life is really threatened and in danger at that point. So it just rang a little uncharacteristic to me watching Tasha cry in this sequence. That's not to say, trauma resides and things trigger it all the time. And, who knows when you can get emotional, but, she is so good at this point in her career and has gone through so much violence and come out of it and had lots of, I would imagine, therapy and all kinds of stuff to get her psychologically prepared to be in this position on the bridge. That, I don't know, it just rang false to me watching it now. I don't remember how I felt about it then. We kind of, I'm sure I understood it as a way to have a different color, have a different vulnerability to this character. But in looking at it now, I would play the scene, I think, quite differently.
I mean, there's something else that followed, and I didn't notice it, many times that I've watched it before when, Tasha says, "Oh, if you weren't the captain." And I wonder what that was all about.
I know. I mean, that's, wow. Well, like, really? You would say that to the captain? I don't think so. I don't know. I mean, again, there's a lot of, there was a lot of, there's whole pieces that were never filmed that indicate to me that Tasha reveres the captain. I mean, there is a scene where she actually goes to Troy, "I don't think I should be here. I'm not qualified. Captain Picard is the greatest captain that's ever flown in space. And I don't know if I'm up. I don't know how I got here. I think they chose the wrong person." And Troy kind of talks her back down from a ledge and basically says, "Oh, no, you are the one. There's no, by no chance did you get here without your incredible talent and skill and work. You're the best in the academy. You just calm down, take a breath, go have a drink, relax, you're fine." And what that indicated to me was just that, Tasha was in awe of Captain Picard and had some self-doubt. And, she covers it by her incredible skill. But there is inside of her that vulnerable child. So, God, that was just a pretty strong come-on line to Captain Picard, Hey, if you weren't the captain, baby, it's like.
Data got pissed at that.
Wow. I did not take it that way at all.
Really?
I kind of did. And I kind of tried to forget
totally
it.
Did.
Yeah, my right mind right now, but I thought she would have hugged him or something.
Me too.
That's a good
that
point.
It was a sexual thing.
Maybe that's how it was explained. And because I don't think, see, again, it's so interesting. All of this is kind of coloring our take on this, having seen this sexualization throughout, of Tasha and we've got Worf flying his lover off the bridge, hitting her, it's like warping my perspective. I'm thinking, oh my God, is it just all this sexual innuendo going on? But that is absolutely a way to play that.
That's a good save, and that's how I'm going to remember it.
These are the things that actors do when they're on the set. By the way, is they try to flush these things out as best they can with the director, with the writers, on the spot as best they can. They're like, "So why am I crying?" Or I don't get this part, or does this mean in a sexual way, or what does she mean by this? These kinds of things are flushed out so that the actor can have an understanding going into the way they're going to hit the notes and what the meaning behind things are. But yeah, I felt the same way when you said that to Picard. It did kind of allude subtly to something more.
Interesting. All right. Well, good stuff, Jason. Thank you. Tierney C. Diekman is here. How are you, Tierney? It's been a while. What do you think of this episode?
Hit and miss, up and down. Good points, bad points. But to piggyback off of what Denise was saying and Sue and a few people in the chat as well, I have it in my notes that with that scene with Tasha and Picard, I felt that Q was poking at Picard, trying to get a reaction out of him with, fraternizing with your crew, whatever it was that he had said, because similarly, it felt like she was saying, if you weren't the captain, I would hug you right now. More than anything, as a father figure, as a comfort, anything. It didn't feel sexual. Nothing about that felt sexual. And you can still be attracted to someone as an attractive person without feeling anything sexually towards them. I mean, there can be that too, but it didn't ring sexual to me, no matter how many times they like to overly sexualize the women in this show, especially now with just a few episodes. But and that scene in general, as well as it's as beautifully as it's acted, another way that I think someone might have felt in that situation is just anger. Just done, just pissed. And you might get to tears in that point after just being overloaded. But I wouldn't see initially Tasha's character going straight into tears unless there is some underlying fear that Q has struck in her, because the character says in another one of those, I don't know what it is with the Q episodes, of just these repetitive lines. I don't know if this was a Gene Roddenberry rewrite thing of, seized my vessel. I think Q says it 3 times. I don't know how many times Picard says it. And in this first episode, at Far Point, there's a lot of repetitive lines, but she says, it might sound strange. It might sound strange. She's in a penalty box. And if someone else makes a mistake or something along those lines, I am gone. So to me felt she knows that if someone does something else, she is gone, oblivion. She is no more. So
how did she know that, though? It's
exactly in your head, and the way that I can relate that is, and I hate to go back to this, as I know sometimes I talk about it often in voice or with friends, but whenever I'm about to have a seizure with my epilepsy, I know. And a lot of times what it starts with is fear that I can't control. And it comes out of almost nowhere sometimes. And at first, when these first started happening, I didn't know where it was coming from. It was very confusing. But now it is just and it's terrifying. At least now I know what it is. But that was what I thought of. I wonder if it's just a Q implantation of, she knows that if somebody else down there makes a mistake, she's done. She is done. And that could elicit that emotion more into tears. But I could see Tasha still starting more with anger. But it still felt like they were exploiting your character again. You get blasted again. Riker doesn't give you a gift. I mean, he's high on Q power, and it still doesn't help you out. But at least with this, old themes. Yes, someone is given God powers, and how do you make that decision? Q, not even once. But it just reminded me, like, have you ever seen someone who doesn't know the difference between management and leadership be promoted and how they instantly change? That's kind of what it felt like. And some of their reactions too. The crew they don't seem so much helpful as they are pissed. But I do like that they leaned into the humor. Riker, gets on the bridge like this, and I can do more with his Q. He's already got his Q gesture down pat, and Data throwing the styrofoam rocks for the first time, throwing the soft rocks, and it makes sense. So there were some moments, but good points, bad points, hit and miss. But at least we are seeing a little bit more of what we know of Picard's real character come through. And I felt that I didn't come in for the battle, but I felt we were seeing a little bit more of him as well. So we're starting to see that the real Picard, he is standing up.
Will the real Picard please stand up? All right. Good stuff. Thank you. What's up, Mai, live in Tokyo?
Hey, I'll run through this really quickly because I know we're getting short on time. What Jason said, what Tierney said, I thought that very questionable writing for such a dominant character, having her cry like that. I mean, did she do that when the rape gangs were coming at her? No, she chucked her cat and said, let's get on. So I don't know. It seemed weird writing to me. The further diminishing of her character, I'm going to have to go back and rewatch this. I must have been in a weird mood when I watched. I didn't see a hug coming at all. That was full-on sexualization, and I thought, let's give her something better than this. Writers just didn't love that. But I'm going to go back and watch it because I think that that's a really interesting take on it, and I've learned something watching just this chat. The violins blending into cellos didn't make me feel like it was a hug. It felt like it was a little bit more romantic. Picard was already up in her face. I don't know if it was her leaning in for a hug. I don't buy that, but we'll see. I'm going to go back and rewatch it. So the other thing was one point and then a question for the actors in the crowd. The thing that struck me when at the very beginning of the episode was when, and I'm not sure if it's your fifth or is it fourth now most frequent guest said recently on Connor and Dominic's show, a lot of curtains died because of Quark, and I was thinking the same thing when this happened. Well, that gold trim there, that came right off of somebody's curtains. I'm not sure about that costume, but yeah. Okay, so anyway, back to Mount Fuji. I got a question. When Riker comes in after he comes back, returns to the ship, and he was 100% out of character. He's like full of himself. He's addressing Picard very differently than he usually does. At first, I felt, I don't like that. That's not who we know as Riker. And his attitude continued to engender more and more disgust in subsequent scenes. But here's my question. Is that feeling that it engendered in me, is that a signal of really good acting? Do you feel, the four of you that are actors here? I'm curious how that struck you. The way that Riker made me feel was yuck, but maybe in retrospect, that seems like successful acting. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
I think so.
Yeah, I think that's the effect. He is embodying that omnipotence, and he's wearing it in a cocky manner. So that's going to, he's not a benevolent God. He's a power thirsty, feeling kind of puffed chest, kind of masculine, and that is going to, we're all going to react and have a reaction to that in our own ways. Some will find that, toxic. Some will find it, wow, oh, well, okay, yeah. What would I do? I'm suddenly can do anything. Am I going to, I'm going to just walk into any situation and anything and So it's true. That is, I think that will elicit some feeling in you, and that's he's doing his job.
Cool. I agree.
Great. Good stuff. Thanks, Mai. Dr. Marie Segal, how are you today?
Good. I mean, first I'm going to say those monsters really scared me when I was little. Those like soldiers are so creepy.
Nightmare fuel.
Oh my gosh, they're such nightmare fuel. But first of all, I love Jordy's lines on the bridge, like towards the end. I quote them all the time. I think it's so funny. Like, is this your idea of sex? And like, hey Wes, not bad. Like, it's just so hilarious. So hilarious.
Wow.
But, what I was gonna say is like, I actually really love that the Yar Picard crying scene. It just really speaks to me every time I see it. It feels like very natural. And there were like maybe first of all, in residency for surgery, like if you were going to cry, which there's a lot to cry about, like people's insane amounts of suffering and circumstances, to like go in a storage closet to do it. And you're working like a million hours and it's just like, sometimes it gets to you. So it was like really nice to see here, like the chief of security on the flagship starship. It's okay for her to cry, and it's a very natural environment. It's not like sometimes on some other Star Treks, it can feel like a little bit fake or forced. It just felt like sometimes things can get to you. And like one time an attending did see me like tearing up, and it was just like such an amazing Picard type reaction. And it's just like, that's such a healthy thing. And I mean, it did feel a little sexualized at the end, which also sometimes is like a normal emotion. But like probably you wouldn't verbalize it. Like that's a little weird. And you know, I think it just does, there's so much more to, like, we have such a long way to go to normalize that kind of thing. Like on the opposite end, I had one attending who saw me like tearing up once, and I was in the call room and he wasn't even supposed to walk in, and he walked in and then he like wrote on my evaluation, like very immature. And I'm like, we need stuff like this it was just really sweet to see, and I loved it. And I think obviously the next step would be if a man who was like high in power had a scene similar with Picard. So like obviously I wish they went there like at some other point. But it's just still like those kind of scenes mean a lot to me.
Great stuff. Good perspective for us. And yeah, if somebody sees someone crying, don't be a dick, by the way. Right? I guess that's the moral of the story there. Any final thoughts before we go? Denise, Cirroc?
I loved, I forgot to mention, I loved the way Q first came on the bridge, that 3-headed cobra orb.
Yeah.
Really cool. That was a good
Trekian name there. What was it? Aldebaran Serpent.
Aldebaran Serpent.
Aldebaran, yeah.
Well, it's spelled Aldebaran. I had to look it up.
Aldebaran.
I didn't know.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. No, it was, again, you know, it just, it reawakens my whole, you know, memory of all of this time in my life and watching these episodes. And, you know, they just look so beautiful in this Blu-ray and this, you know, God, man. Like, I'm glad I was that age doing this show. Preserved. But very, very fun to watch. Really enjoying this and hanging out with you guys. So I will see you. We're taking
I like to see Q as Data when he was kind of like
that's right.
Makeup.
That was cool.
I thought that was cool. Also, I think Flim Flam is a reference to erectile dysfunction.
I knew you were going somewhere with that one.
Yeah.
Sorry. I did like Picard saying to Riker when he says, "I permitted this meeting." He kind of reminded him, like, I'm the one that called this meeting, like, not you. I like that. And then lastly, I would say when I saw Data throwing those boulders, I just kept saying, throw them, bows. And that was it. That's all I got.
Cirroc Lofton, everybody. That's my time, everybody. Good night. Tip your waitress. All right. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Melissa, Carrie, Homer, Sue, Matt, Chris, Jason, Tierney, Anne Marie, and Mai. We got bonus content. Hopefully you'll see it. If not, always remember the 7th rule. And thanks for joining.